Tonight, I brought some pirates from Maine, my family. Grammy and Grandpa, Mom and Dad, please welcome them to the Geneva reading series, Pirates. What is a pirate? A sea thief, one who without authority and by violence interferes with the property of another upon the sea. Once upon a time, I was kayaking in Branch Pond, a huge pond in Maine, and I discovered that if I parked my kayak in the water 200 yards from the old grist mill on shore and then sang like a whale, my song would echo back majestically off the mill and send my voice booming over the entire 310 acres of the pond, filling all the world and my whole being with a sense of my considerable worth. So I parked my kayak 200 yards from the mill and began to sing. Again, this was Maine, so it was 200 yads. Yes, Y-A-D-S, yads. Here's another Maine pronunciation. What do you name your daughter if she's a hockey puck made of chicken? Patty. On the count of 3, say chicken patty. 1, 2, 3. Chicken patty. When you said that, my Maine family didn't just picture a disc of compressed poultry. They pictured chickens having a party. They pictured a farmer bursting into the chicken barn, seeing the chickens dancing, and then saying, "You chickens up here having a patty." One day, I'm going to write a book full of thousands of words that help Flatlanders speak with a Maine accent. One other day, I'm going to write a different book called simply F-Word. It's going to be a coffee table book filled with black and white photographs of people on the cusp of saying the F-word. It's one of my favorite faces. My book will contain many children making the face, local politicians, police officers, kindergarten teachers, but mostly pastors. I want everyone to know pastors are people too, especially Titus Martin. Titus lives right up the road from me and is often doing yad work, which in my experience makes a person's language cosmically filthy. So on the count of 3, Titus, don't say cheese. Say the first word that comes to mind when your old rake gives you a nasty splinter. 1, 2, 3. Ow! Anyways, so I was 200 yards from the mill, making sweet, sweet whale song. And listening to it echo back to me. For like over an hour. Suddenly, I heard from the far end of Branch Pond the sound of a boat engine. I sighed bitterly. Why can't people let me have a quiet day on the pond? Jean-Paul Sartre was right. Hell is other people. The engine grew louder and louder, and soon I saw a little boat. It was heading right toward me, and I thought, there's no boat landing around here. I wonder what they're up to. Oh, they must be people who like getting to their fishing spot at 40 miles an hour. The boat drew nearer and nearer. I saw a man driving it, and a youth, like me, was in the bow, as prominent as a figurehead carved onto the prow of an old-timey ship, except the youth wasn't a topless mermaid. He was a youth, fully topped and furious. And I thought, if going fishing makes you that angry, why do it? The boat finally reached me and started circling the kayak close. Waves getting bigger and bigger, threatening to swamp my boat. And then I noticed the father and son were yelling at me. I couldn't hear the words over the engine, but the words looked like this. But I'm no lip reader, so I couldn't respond. They kept making waves around me, but they didn't realize how much I love waves. I started playing in the waves. This made the father and son try again to communicate their mysterious message to me. Eventually, they gave up and left. However, as they were departing, the youth extended both arms and with his longest fingers made symbols I later translated to mean the following message just for me. Greetings. I, a low IQ youth bound for prison, along with my idiot father fresh home from prison, go fishing for the peace and quiet of God's watery world. We don't go fishing to listen to some lunatic kid screaming the sex sounds of whales for over an hour. But at the time, I had no idea what the youth's symbols meant. All I could do was return the twin gestures, hoping to communicate back to him what I assumed was a benevolent Godspeed, fellow pilgrim. It wasn't until I started thinking seriously about pirates recently that I realized something wonderful. That day on the pond so long ago, I was one who without authority and by violence interfered with the property of another upon the sea. What was the property of the dirty, villainous father and his dud child? Peace and quiet. What was I? One who without authority used the violence of 900 consecutive whale catcalls to interfere. What is a pirate? Me. Also, a pirate is you. How do I know? Because only pirates would board a vessel always threatening to sink under the weight of its own luscious booty. What else is a pirate? A pirate is this.
He brings me here to teach ye a sea shanty. Shall we sing together? You may know the chorus already, but it goes something like this. Way, hey, up she rises, way, hey, up she rises, way, hey, up she rises, early in the morning. That be terrible. You don't say morning, you say marden. That be less terrible. I sing ye the verses penned by this genius here, and we all sing the chorus together. Shall we begin? Aye. Are you ready? Aye. What shall we do with Geneva, students? What shall we do with Geneva, students? What shall we do with Geneva, students? Early in the morning, way, hey, and up she rises, way, hey, and up she rises, way, hey, and up she rises, early in the morning. Stuff your noggins with a crusty worldview, gets you terrified about vocation. John Calvin is your one salvation, lie in the mud.
Way hey up she rises, way hey up she rises, way hey up she rises, lie in the morning.
Farsi to sing the Psalms of David, even the one where God gets knifey. Amazing grace, not on your life, be lie in the morning.
Way hey up she rises, way hey up she rises, way hey up she rises, lie in the morning.
Talk about love till you hate your neighbor, talk about death till we got you crying. Push the good life till you got you praying for dying lie in the morning. Sorry.
Hey hey up she rises, way hey up she rises, way hey up she rises, lie in the morning.
Send you away with a piece of paper and with a spouse whoever, pay back her debt now and forever, lie in the morning.
Way hey up she rises, way hey up she rises, way hey up she rises, lie in the morning.
The one and only Dr. Matt Kikasola. And welcome once again to the Geneva reading series, Pirates. I was recently asked to be the master of ceremonies at the 100 Years of Geneva Engineering celebration. We gathered in Alexander Dining Hall to celebrate not only 100 years of engineering, but also Dr. Jim Gidley, who will retire after this year. Let's hear it for Jim. My plan that night? To make Jim laugh and to make him cry. So I wrote a bunch of jokes about engineers and how they're not fully human, but are born without empathy or joy, and spend their lives seeing through things to the equations beneath, undressing bridges and sewage treatment plants with their eyes. After the event, I received an email from Jim thanking me. I read rapidly, sniffing for compliments. But mostly I was reading to find out what he thought of the moment that had failed colossally. The make Jim cry moment. Here's what happened. I wanted to honor him on the brink of his retirement by giving him the greatest gift in the universe. The gift of having a huge room full of people sing him a song of admiration and love. Where'd I get the idea? The film, White Christmas. If you're not familiar, the main characters honor a retired World War II general by throwing a party for him, one that brings back a ton of his old soldiers. They all sing a song to the general. They sing these lyrics: "We'll follow the old man wherever he wants to go." And they sing some more words and end with, "Because we love him, we love him." I rewrote the words so the song ended with these wonderful lines: "And we'll tell the kiddies we answered duty's call with the grandest old professor of them all." In the movie, the soldiers sing loudly. It's a room booming to the rafters with the voices of heroes who helped to save the world. When dreaming of the moment, I imagined the song rattling all the dishes, the silverware, and the dentures in the room. It had worked out so all the engineering professors, I wanted them, except Jim, to join me up front while the students handed out my lyrics to the masses. Then, when everything was ready, I cried out, "All rise!" All rose. And we began to sing a song we had not practiced at all. But we hadn't needed to practice. Everyone knows this movie, I thought. Everyone's memorized the singing scene at the end, just like me. Also, I'd known the engineering professors would lead the song wonderfully because I'd assumed they were all wonderful singers. Because I'd assumed they were all Reformed Presbyterians. Turns out that's not the case. They're not RPs, they just have terrible personalities. You can see how I made the mistake. They're probably mistaken for RPs all the time. Like I said, everyone stood. Then the song began. One thing you need to know about me, I'm no singer. I sing strictly from the throat, leaving my diaphragm out of it, because I'm not a pervert. Unfortunately, in the entire room of potential voices, my throaty, straining voice was the loudest because mine was the only one singing. Because the cluster of engineers at my back were simply reading the lyrics to themselves silently, and all the people in the room were people who hate Christmas and therefore had never watched that iconic movie. So it was just me yelling at Jim, calling him an old man over and over. Jim's email did not mention the song. If you're a writer, and Jim is, you know sometimes what is artfully not said is the lethal thing. In other words, I heard what he hadn't said loud and clear. Therefore, tonight is my attempt to, my objective, make Jim weep even if it kills him. How did I prepare for this moment? I had to dig deep, to search through time and space for material to produce a prose momentum that would kick his heart in the balls so hard tears would shoot from his eyes like peeing fountains. How far back did I have to go? To his father, to his grandfather, and to another old Christmas movie, It's a Wonderful Life. If you don't know this film, it's about a brilliant guy with amazing potential who throws it all away for a life of domestic hardship and financial disaster, and then, for some reason, wants to kill himself. But then God saves his life by showing him a life that's so much worse than the one he's in. A life where he has no friends whatsoever, no family, and tragically everyone he used to know is either a librarian or a prostitute. In the end, the guy's like, I guess I'll not kill myself. I'll just let my mooching family and friends keep killing me slowly for the rest of my life. It shouldn't be called It's a Wonderful Life. I call it I'm God, and I'll give you something to cry about. And now, a story. Once upon a time, Dan Williams knew an engineering professor, Jim Gidley, who was not only good at math, but was also a lord of literature, which made Dan feel insignificant. He took a lonely walk one evening and wound up at the East Vale Bridge. Looking down at the dark, deadly water, he prayed, Dear Father in heaven, I'm at the end of my rope. If you're up there, please remove all the Gidleys from existence. Would you pretend it's Old Testament times again and wipe them out, gracious and merciful Father? And God's like, no, but I'll let you take a peek at another dimension where there are no Gidleys. And God took Dan by the hand, and when he had spit on his eyes and put his hands upon Dan's eyes, he asked him what he saw. And Dan looked up and said, I see me, only I'm head boy. And I'm holding the Quidditch cup. What the, saith the Lord? And Dan said, I look good. Whoops, said God, then spit in Dan's face again. What do you see now? And Dan said, I see ash, a gray world, no, a red world, dominated by soulless, miserable, freezing, drug-enhanced pianists and gymnasts. Russia, God said. Yeah, but it's the whole world. This, said God, is the world without the Gidleys. Impossible, Dan said. Then the Lord explained, and this is completely true. In your dimension, in the 19th century, in the land of New England, there lived a man whose name was Job Gidley, grandfather of Jim. Job was literally his name. This man was blameless and upright and famous for riding upon a white horse all through New England, a Quaker, a farmer, and a dude who helped Russian immigrants settle in Canada. And Dan said, wait, helping the Russians? I thought Russian domination had to do with the lack of Gidleys. Once more, God spit on Dan. Again, Dan said, why all the spit? And God said, shall the clay say to him that fashioneth it, why all the spit? Sorry, Dan said. And God said, be thankful for whatever I give you. Wipe it not away. Dan wiped not. Thank you. Please continue. God continued, in World War II, this is also true, Jim's father, Philip Tucker Gidley, helped develop a synthetic rubber for lining fighter jet fuel tanks so they would self-heal when shot. Do you remember reading in your history books how America lost World War II because our Air Force kept exploding? No, Dan said, exactly. Because of Philip Gidley. And the man in question, James Gidley, following in his father's innovative footsteps, worked on a successful experiment to make a building material by dissolving styrofoam waste in gasoline and adding sawdust. In other words, the evil world brought to rubble by our unexplodable jets, by Gidley, was a world righteously rebuilt by Gidley. Now do you understand the gravity of your prayer? Yes, Dan said. But what about helping Russian immigrants? God answered, the following will be true. In the year 2023, when Russia invades the United States, Russia is struck by a wave of Canadian-Russian resistance. Russians who only pretended to be feeble, silly, French, and inconsequential so as to pose as Canadians. Russians who know how to fight Russians because they're Russians. Using a form of hand-to-hand combat which incorporates ballet, gymnastics, starvation, steroids, and little man syndrome, the Canadian Russians defeat the Russians and put an end to World War III. So Dan, saith the Lord, if your wish came true and there were no Gidleys, there would be no world as you know it. You, right now, would be in a leotard. Your buttocks would look spectacular. Spectacular but sad, for your dance would be a dance upon the grave of America. In other words, you owe Jim your thanks. Go and give it. Therefore, I am here with a word of thanks in my heart for Jim. I lied. Not a word. A song. All rise. I'm just kidding. There's no song. Sit. No, it doesn't work. I tried. No song but a word. Geneva College will miss Jim because we love him. We love him. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Dr. Jim Gidley.
Well, Dan, you did bring tears to my eyes. It just wasn't on cue. You asked Shaw to play my mother's favorite Chopin waltz. That will bring tears to my eyes any time. All you have to do is play it on the sound system. You would have had waterworks here easily. You may find this hard to believe, but Dan asked me to be serious tonight. Now, he didn't use the word serious. I don't think he has that word in his vocabulary. But I sort of read between the lines. So it's my task to be the straight man this evening. But it's all for the good, I think, because we've all found out in recent days how risky it is to be a comedian. I might randomly point to someone in the crowd and say, "Looking good, Dan. Looking forward to seeing you in Batman Goes to Rehab." All right, but I'll try to make it through this without tears, because I do want to say something serious to you. One of the most memorable moments in my years of teaching at Geneva was when I lectured to the Humanities 203 class on Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. To make it a bit more interesting, I gave the lecture in the persona of the monster. I briefly considered inviting the monster to speak in my place this evening, but I decided to speak for myself. You might well wonder how a professor of engineering could be found in such a place giving such an odd performance. Well, thereby hangs a tale. 32 years ago this spring, I accepted a job offer from Geneva to come and lead the engineering program to accreditation. The college took a chance on a young guy who had only 9 years of teaching experience and no administrative experience. I was looking forward to teaching in an institution where I could express my faith openly. I was looking forward to teaching engineering in a context of the humanities and integrating faith, humanities, and engineering. I soon found out that many of my colleagues in the humanities were less enthusiastic about engineering, some things never change, than I was about Christ and culture. In fact, some were enamored of the anti-technology writings of the French sociologist Jacques Ellul and his American popularizer Neil Postman. Still reading him, I take it. I was already familiar with Ellul, but I began reading anti-technology writers with greater urgency. It was a matter of life and death, for if my colleagues were right, and Ellul was onto something fundamentally important about the modern world, then my whole calling as an engineering professor was suspect. Had I been the unwitting tool of malignant forces arrayed against humanity itself? Along this journey, I developed a course on technology and society in collaboration with Dr. Williams's predecessor in the English department, Dr. Mark Haas. I discovered a fine book by the philosopher Frederick Faray, who introduced me to the concept of the technosphere, the man-made environment that surrounds us almost as thoroughly as the atmosphere. I have often introduced this concept to students by asking them to imagine what their lives would be like if they had no technology at all. Only once did I have a student give the correct answer. He probably thought he was being snarky. I would be naked in the woods. But that is exactly the correct answer. You would be naked in the woods. You would have nothing that was man-made, not even a paperclip, and not a stitch of clothing. Without technology, if you didn't die of hypothermia sleeping under blankets of snow, you would be forced to satisfy your raging hunger with a few berries. And when that did not satisfy, you would have to catch an animal with your bare hands and eat it raw. You might even resort to cannibalism, since your fellow human beings are among the creatures least able to escape you. I dare say that few, if any of us, would survive more than a week. In other words, we depend on the technosphere for survival almost as completely as we depend on the air we breathe. Human beings are as truly Homo faber as we are Homo sapiens. We not only know things, we also make things. But if technology is human, then anti-technology is anti-human. A turning point in my career at Geneva was the one sabbatical that I had in 41 years of college teaching. It was only one semester in length. I spent the time studying Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. I had discovered that Frankenstein was one of the most popular tropes among anti-technologists, so much so that genetically modified plants and animals have been dubbed Frankenfood. Frankenstein's monster has become the go-to metaphor for technology run amok, and Mary Shelley's tale of horror is often read as a cautionary tale about technology. I came to the conclusion that Frankenstein is indeed a cautionary tale, but it warns against something far deeper and more important than the unintended consequences of developing a new technology. It is a tale of human reification and deification. The fundamental premise of Frankenstein, a premise shared by most Western intellectuals in our day, is that human beings are merely material things. As Rodney Brooks, director of a robotics laboratory at MIT, put it, "I believe myself and my children to be mere machines. Every person I meet is also a machine. A big bag of skin full of biomolecules interacting according to describable and knowable rules." You might want to invite him sometime. He seems to talk like you, Dan. I know. But in short, we have no souls. Therefore, we are simultaneously mere objects with no transcendent meaning and transcendent deities who can make ourselves. This belief is a tragic and dangerous lie, and its consequences are being worked out all around us in a myriad of ways. What happens when you believe that it is possible to manufacture human beings? Robot technologists are at this moment busily making sophisticated machines of silicon and steel that they declare will be sentient beings. Men declare themselves to be women, and we disagree with them at the risk of society's scorn and disdain. Both declarations are as much a claim to divine prerogative as to declare, "Let there be light." But when God said, "Let there be light," there was light. We live in dark times, and we don't know how deep the darkness will become before God inflames the light again. What can we do? Live in the light. Strive towards the light, and build something that reflects the light. That is the message that I bring from the engineering department to my friends in the humanities. Build something. In some ways, these are dark times for the college. Nevertheless, I say, build Geneva College, that she may thrive despite the darkness. Bearing witness to the light, being full of hope for a better day, even the day of our Lord Jesus Christ. And as you build, pray with Moses, the man of God, Return, O Lord, how long? Have pity on your servants. Satisfy us in the morning with your steadfast love, that we may rejoice and be glad all our days. Make us glad for as many days as you have afflicted us, and for as many years as we have seen evil. Let your work be shown to your servants, and your glorious power to their children. Let the favor of the Lord our God be upon us, and establish the work of our hands upon us. Yes, establish the work of our hands. Amen.
Jim Gidley. Human Verses, Part 1, Subtitle, A Time to Hate. Ah, spring, one of my favorite times of year. Territorial songbirds prettily scream foul language at one another. Squirrels attempt to make love, and I crush them with my car and my boot. In order to keep this world pure. And students take up fluorescent-colored arms and balled-up socks and run all over campus, heedless of their studies and the consequences of sudden unprecedented exercise. It's a beautiful chaos. Behind every bit of chaos, though, you might not expect it. There is an organizing principle, a leader, a creature for whom chaos is order. On our campus, this creature goes by many names. Lena, Lean Bean, Mags, Magda, and Magdalena. She is the reason for our HVZ season, Humans versus Zombies. She's president and director of the event, but you already knew this. How about some things you didn't know? 1, she hates a person called Charlie Zinn. A Geneva student, editor-in-chief of the cabinet, and a fellow who I admit is fun to hate. 2, Magdalena absolutely loves musicals. Human Verses, Part 2. Subtitle, Zombies, the Musical. You are about to hear a story. It will now be told to you, sung to you, by a beautiful phantom. HVZ time, humans versus zombies, students armed with toy guns and stuffed sockies, haunting sweaty bodies, abandoning their studies. Once a human, her name Magdalena.
Magdalena met a zombie, Charlie, whom she hated. He tried with his skill to infect her, make her ill, killed her kindred with his speed and dead embrace. But Magdalena nerfed him in the face. Close your eyes, zombie Charlie, wait for your respawn. It will take 2 to 3 minutes, my dear. Now's your chance, let your hatred bring you good. And you'll kill as you've never killed before.
Unfortunately,
Magdalena shot him while he was stunned. 90 Nerf darts. He was out for hours. Night was fading fast. Charlie's chance had nearly passed. Yet he woke in time to crucify her luck. But Magdalena fragged him with a song.
next year Charlie had a devious plan that would surely succeed. Lovely phantom, take the form of Charlie's Inn and sing the story.
I know how to kill Magdalena now. I'll call my friends, my Grove City friends. They're douchebags, but they'll help. When she finds that she's surrounded by these a-holes from the north, she will finally turn corpse and foamingly go forth. So the snobby dead chased her into the College Hill RP Church. Trapped, she's screwed. But that's when she sent out Geneva strength, our secret weapon heathens dread. The RPs who can bore to death even the undead.
The RPs, with their endless theological Gordian naughtiness, drove the Grove City scum away. The following year, Charlie sent word to his friend who had long ago retired from HVZ. "I need you to come in," said Charlie. "I'm long ago retired," said his friend. "Nothing could bring me back, not after HVZ Spring 2019. The cops showed up, it's true. "Like I said the friend, never. "Never," said Charlie. "I seem to recall you had a crush on a certain Magdalena." "She's the problem. She's grown too powerful, and rumor has it she only dates worthy adversaries. Defeat her, and who knows, she might date you." The friend scowled. "How dare you bring my personal life into this? I'll do it." What's the mission? The mission was this. Charlie's friend had the ability to look passively human while carrying around inside a cold, analytical, math-worshipping core. for his left brain had eaten his right. In other words, he could be blissfully robotic inside dead, but look alive enough on the surface to get close to Magdalena and attack. This I will do, said the friend. And Charlie said, good luck, my friend, Nathaniel Bray. Human Verses, Part 3, subtitle, Love in the Time of Zombies. And now, my phantom, it's time for your toughest challenge yet. To tell the final story, you'll have to take the form of Nathaniel Bray and also sing in the voice of Magdalena. Good luck.
Idea. My name is Nathaniel. They call me Mr. Bray. Some say I'm a math robot, loving numbers. Yeah, a whole lot. But now I have a mission to murder this lean bean. She's tough, human, a killer, but I'll be her undoer. Greetings, Magdalena, I'm a human. You can trust me to draw nearer. Notice though I'm bone white pale, I'm living. Can I brush that eyelash from your cheek? Why? Because I'm no zombie. Not so fast, Mr. Bray. There's something strange with you. You seem living and yet not, loving only long equations. But I think you're special. Some men I prefer dead. Projects, men I can revive. Zombies I can make alive. So say you'll stay with me as I restore you. I'll make your dead heart beat once again. You'll no longer love for math and murder. Anywhere you go, you'll be alive. But first, kill Charlie, then you'll live. Magdalena, Charlie's a zombie. How can I kill one who's dead already? Lovely Pooh, I dub you moderator. Tell him he's banned forevermore. My cuddle biscuit, I'm somewhat confused. Is it because I'm a moderator and could excommunicate Charlie anytime I choose? That is it, my snuggle honeybee. Sugar lips, don't ever question me.
Matt Kikasola, everybody!
And now I give you the queen of humans, bane of zombies, Magdalena Mastro.
I love you, Charlie. I just want to point out, to the shock of literally no one, that everything that Dr. Williams just said about me is in fact 100% true. But what he did not mention is that I have a lot of stories from my life, too many for only being 21. And this story just so happens to be known as the infamous Tinder story. Oh no. It was a warm, sunny Monday evening in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, where our story starts. And our main character, me, liked flexing that she moved away from all of her friends and family and has vowed to not go boy crazy or try to get into a relationship with any man whatsoever, thank you very much. But let's be real, we all know how well that turned out. Prior to the 26th of July, I had spent the weekend by myself. All of my housemates were gone for the weekend, and my parents were getting more ticked off that I was spending too much money at Target, Goodwill, and the Adams County Rescue Mission thrift store, that and 82 Cafe. So I spent my Saturday afternoon scrolling on TikTok like any normal bored human being of this generation does, and I came across this one TikTok of someone downloading Tinder Premium so they could swipe on Olympic athletes in the Olympic Village. I decided that downloading and swiping through Tinder would be a great way to spend my weekend, better than sitting out on the swing and listening to Chasing Lincoln's Killer on Audible. So I downloaded Tinder. Now, because Tinder Premium costs money that I don't have, I settled for the normal Tinder and began my search for a man I could potentially troll because I was bored. It was Monday, the 26th of July, 2021. I remember that date because I had a ghost tour that night, and it was one of my last tours before moving back to Geneva. I had just gone out of the shower and decided to check my Tinder notifications to see if anyone had messaged me. A few people had, and while I was waiting for a response, I started swiping again. As I was swiping through, I came across one particular profile of a guy who looked familiar to me. The first photo that I saw of him was in his police officer uniform, and he was sticking his tongue out, which is tacky to say the least. He had big brown eyes, bushy eyebrows, and dark brown hair. Underneath his picture, he had listed some of his interests: museums, art, coffee, photography, all of the things, too, I am interested in, so I'm really not surprised that he showed up in my feed. I swiped through the rest of his pictures and came to the very last one, a photo of him and his little brother with the Snapchat dog filter on. Immediately, I recognized his little brother, for I'd taken a picture of him on July 1st for the Gettysburg Battle anniversary. In his Tinder bio was a link to his Instagram page, which I clicked on. When my phone brought me to his Instagram page, I gasped and almost screamed very loudly as if I had been stabbed. The guy whose Tinder profile popped into my feed was one of my coworkers. His name was Austin. He was a security guard at the Gettysburg National Military Park Visitor Center, the same place I had spent the last almost 3 months of my internship at. I'd spoken to him before, and I acquired a Snapchat a week prior to our story starting, so I could send him a video that I had edited for him to watch and review. He was always fun to pick on, like an older brother, and I made sure I'd stop by to say hi to him on my walk around the building when I needed social interaction or a break from my office. I started following him on Instagram and then went back to Tinder, almost swiping left, which means not interested, but then I decided to swipe right, communicating interest, thinking I would match with him right away. I didn't. So I moved on with my life and got ready for my ghost tour later that night. As I was getting into my car, I heard my phone buzz. I looked at the notification and saw that I got an Instagram direct message from him. Quote, "LOL, how did you find my Insta? I have my resources, and by resources I literally mean it took me a good 3 months to learn how to spell your last name. So you are telling me you didn't find me on Tinder? Oh, I forgot about that. Well, I lied." "And if my resources are wrong, then why did you take 3 months to learn my last name? Of what importance is this to you?" End quote. During this time, I drove to work. Being in an awkward position and using humor to cope, I knew I had to get myself out of this situation. When I got to work, I had some time to kill before my tour started, so I resumed the conversation. Quote, "First of all, this has been fun. I now need to flee the country. Second of all, I wanted to find your Instagram. Thirdly, I got Tinder as a joke and did not expect the algorithm to do that. Ha ha ha, so why'd you still swipe? You didn't have to, not to mention you could have asked, ha ha ha. Are you trying to tell me something? End quote. I'm very oblivious. Quote, IDK, try contacting your sources. Lena's busy, end quote. I'd use the European spelling of Lena to conceal my identity on Tinder due to the massive amount of horror stories I've heard of women being stalked by people they've met on dating apps. Quote, well, I guess you're out of luck. I'll put it to you this way. Yes, if I would have found you on Tinder, I would have swiped because A, just to see, B, why not, C, because I would, D, because, for whatever reason, I always set myself up for disappointment, LOL, end quote. I had an idea of what he was trying to say, and I was also trying to be sympathetic in a way. He was gearing up to ask me out on a date, and my gut feeling was telling me so. Quote, I relate to D so much. As long as you're not ticked at me, I can live with this. Why would I be ticked? I'd say something, but the last thing I want is to get either of us in trouble / picked on. Why would we get in trouble for this? Because my sources may or may not find you attractive. End quote. I almost dropped my phone. I was shocked. I had no idea he had a crush on me and kept it a secret for the longest time. Why didn't he say anything before, and why didn't he make any effort to say anything? It kind of made me mad. I gave him my phone number before my tour and asked him to call me afterwards. We talked on the phone for an hour and agreed to a date the following Wednesday. Our first date together was great, and we ended up going on another date before I moved back for band camp. We decided to talk via Snapchat, but while I talked to him, he seemed emotionally disconnected and didn't want to fight for anything. I was drained over the fact that he didn't talk to me for 6 days and didn't tell me why, nor did he apologize. I was too focused on wanting to be in a relationship, and deep down I was hurt. He asked me to be his girlfriend on the 24th of September, 2021, and I almost said yes, until Nathaniel Bray asked me out. But but that, my friends, is a whole other story. Thank you.
Magdalena.
Woo!
Here are a few of George's favorite things.
Yeah, George.
Anime. Cats. Theater. Here's something George hates. Live-action Disney remakes. One of George's dreams, to become a pastor. Something he likes to say, cool beans. Special skills, impersonation. He can impersonate Dr. Traub, Dr. Curtis, Terry Thomas, Dr. Scheidemantel, and many, many more. Maybe he'll be so good as to share a voice or two with us tonight. Does George suffer from any disorders? Yes. Extroversion. What about past romantic crushes? Does he have any of those? George once crushed on a cartoon cat, confusingly shaped like a human woman. She starred in Disney's Treasure Planet. Her name, Captain Amelia. Now, I will take all 9 of these facts and turn them into a story starring George Leland Della Piazza. The story is called, Can I Still Be a Pastor After the Crushes I've Had? Once upon a time, George felt the urge to be with people. This is one of the symptoms of the tragic disorder he was born with. It's a disorder causing you to be loud and unpredictable, and in most cases tolerable only to others who have been afflicted with the same disorder. But George was different. He somehow had the ability not only to speak the loud and awful language of those sharing his ailment, but to speak the quiet, intelligent language of a massively underrepresented group of people blessed with the ability to listen and to speak only when they have something to say. George hunted all over campus for a group of his people, the loud and the wise alike. He found many groups that had one kind or the other, but never both. First, he tried a group of extroverts. These were a peculiar kind, ironically fashioned in the agoraphobic fires of homeschool. This creates a fascinating ego. Within a womb the size of a house, these children are cooked up from the following ingredients: a hard pinch of stringent, joyless morality, and 500 gallons of over-encouragement. The result? The Genevans. As soon as George felt morality's savage pinch, he did not turn the other cheek, but rejected the Genevans. Rather, he tried to. Before he could, the Genevans said to him what is printed on their new promotional t-shirts. On the front, "You can't reject us." On the back, "We already rejected you." Next, George tried the anime club. But this club was populated with introverts so introverted that when he walked into the room, they hid under furniture, behind curtains, and climbed to the top of their shag carpet cat trees and looked down on George with disproportionately huge eyes which shook violently with emotion. "Sorry," George said softly, backing away. "I should have warned you 3 days ago that I was stopping by." Just before he left, one of the club members said, "Tell us what you love about anime and maybe you can stay." "I love the illustration style," said George. "It's incredibly easy to imitate, giving illustrators without talent the impression that they're artists long enough to build identities that help them survive the awkward ages of 12 to 23. Anime's a vital crutch that's completely biodegradable. In other words, everyone quits drawing that way when they have a mortgage and a 5-year-old marriage." "You understand anime," said the group, "too well. Be gone." George sighed and begonned himself, wandering until he was standing in the dead center of campus by the John Black Johnston clock. There, he prayed a risky prayer. "God, give me a sign, something that will lead me to my people." Just then, George heard a sound, a loud voice on campus. The voice, Dr. Traup's. The president was standing nearby with Professors Dr. Curtis, Terry Thomas, and Dr. Scheidemantel. The sound of all their voices together created a problem for George. You see, not only was he blessed with the ability to impersonate anyone on earth who possessed a memorable voice, but he was cursed with the unconquerable need to do so when triggered by a sighting or sounding of one of his subjects. But here was a sighting and sounding of 4 of his classics, a group of high-powered dudes who held George's career in the palm of their righteous fists. If they heard his imitations, they'd crush his dream. He would never get to be a pastor, never get to experience burnout every 6 months in the service of his very own emotionally vampiric congregation. George slapped his hands over his mouth and ran wildly away, running and finally ducking into a little alley between 2 buildings, Alexander Hall and some other building that was a mystery to him. A sound seeped through the wall of the mystery building, and George leaned close. It was the sound of voices, voices projecting with power, with the exultant zip of extroversion, but also with the force of voices being bagpipes stomped out of the reluctant lungs of the profoundly introverted. Cool beans, said George. It sounds like home in there. He went to the front door, opened it, and was immediately and pleasantly overwhelmed by people in costumes running this way and that, swords clanging, people spouting songs, poetry, declarations of love, scripted and in earnest. I was right, said George. I'm home. Suddenly, the director of the theater appeared. She was a fiery redhead who, according to rumor, had married very, very well. Is this a theater? George asked. Yes, said the director. Then George said, you guys don't do live-action Disney remakes, do you? No, said the director. We also don't take famous paintings and rub excrement all over them, if you're wondering. Perfect, said George. In the Bagpiper Theater, he was soon swept away by the gleeful ferocity, the passion, the heart-wrenching confessions, revelations, epiphanies, the declarations of love and the retractions of love, the backstabbing, redemption, the more backstabbing, and all this in a single half hour in the green room. George thought, what must the productions be like? The first time he stood on stage, basking in the glorious lights, which made him feel more real and alive than ever before, he began going through an existential crisis, considering changing his denomination and major, rushing into love, and getting a tattoo. Such is the power of the theater. Just then, someone appeared beside him, having crept up on little cat feet. George turned. It was a girl. I didn't hear you, said George. You move like a cat, and you have the shape of a human woman. You are strange, she said, but you have a nice face. Have you ever considered shaving that beard off? I can't shave it off, George said. I was born with it. This was a fight, and they hadn't even started dating yet. But the theater world is topsy-turvy. You often start with hatred only to end in marriage, the reverse of the traditional Christian union. After weeks and weeks of rehearsal, it was finally time for George's first big show. He would be playing 15 different characters because of his demon possession level voice acting ability. But he heard just before the curtains opened that many professors were in the audience that night, and the president. Which professors? George hissed. The director answered, Dr. Curtis, Terry Thomas, and Dr. Scheidemantel. Uncool beans. Warm, nay, hot beans. What if I accidentally start imitating them? I have an idea, said the director. Don't. Before George knew it, the curtains parted and the play began. He tried not to make eye contact with the president or the professors, but he couldn't help himself. Though when he did, a strange thing happened. Because of the magic of theater, audience members are not quite themselves. Cynicism bows to wonder, belief in death recedes, and a belief in fairies takes its place. In other words, audience members no longer how old or reformed. Those audience members become children again. George saw this happen to the great men and thought, those are not the men I know. Those are children. And since I've never heard the voices of them as children, I can't imitate them. Though if George could know the whole truth, he'd know he was only mostly right, for Byron Curtis had burst from the womb sounding exactly like Byron Curtis. The show was a great success. George delighted all, insulted none, and went on to use his theatrical skills behind the pulpit. Sunday after Sunday, George stood before his flock, a sea of diverse congregants, from singing homeschoolers with satanic levels of pride to introverts dragged to church kicking and screaming by God's relentless grace. And George gave the people a great gift. Sermons so dramatic, hilarious, thrilling, and so mercifully short that when he spoke, everyone became children again and believed. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you George Della Piazza.
I'll have you all know that my impressions are all only ever done out of love, unless they're not. But all the impressions I do of professors are done out of love because they're awesome. Calvin Traub, when he walks up on the stage for chapel, always has this big grin on his face, and he talks like this. He's like, "Good morning, Geneva." He says, "It is great to be here this morning at chapel, where we will talk about God." Dr. Scheidemantel oftentimes scrunches his eyes together when he talks like this. And he talks like this. And he says, "Yes." Terry Thomas, whenever I tell someone about Terry, they're like, "This man does not exist." And I assure all of you, he does. And the way that he talks is just, it's wonderful. He makes all manner of noises that I assume are vowels. I wish I could tell you what they are, but like, my roommate Michael, he told me one time that he was in class and Terry went through every single vowel in the alphabet in one attempt to speak. He was like, maybe we're gonna talk about this today. By the way, he's a huge fan of Teen Beach Movie. Just thought I'd throw that out there. And Dr. Curtis, who has graced us with his presence this evening. Okay. So one time, my friends and I were sitting in the brig, and we were talking about a show, an anime, where there are characters that were working out, and Dr. Curtis was sitting right in the booth next to us, and we were talking about squats, and he didn't hear what we were talking about. He goes, "Oh." And he said, and I said, "Dr. Curtis, we're talking about Body Improvement Month, and it's leg day, and we're way too busy doing squats." And he said, "Oh, I guess I don't know squat." Anyway, I am not going to be doing impressions all evening. I have a short story to read you guys. So, little background behind this story. I wrote it last spring, and I'm a huge fan of The Emperor's New Groove. It's my favorite Disney movie. If they make a live action remake of Emperor's New Groove, I will dig up Walt Disney's body. I'm gonna stop there. Anyway, one of my favorite parts about the movie was the character Kronk, who has a shoulder angel and a shoulder demon on either shoulder that go back and forth and try to help him make decisions, and it goes all over the place. And so I was inspired by that, and I wrote a story about it. This is the Shoulder Brigade. Stop me if you've heard this one. An angel, a demon, and a kleptomaniac walk into a hair salon. I guess this isn't so much a joke as it is a really long story. Angels don't have wings. We don't have halos, and we don't look like people. Whenever we reveal ourselves to them, their simple little minds can't even begin to comprehend our true forms. Humans have a tendency to fill in whatever they can't process with things that they can imagine. Frankly, it's not very flattering. In some writings, we're described as massive sky wheels that are covered with eyes, and there's this other thing about us all having animal heads or something like that. Why don't humans understand symbolism? What was I saying? Oh, right. Angels are assigned to different chores. I mean duties, to perform throughout heaven and earth. Some angels serve as guardians or protectors. Others minister to the impoverished, imprisoned, and lowly. The toughest of the tough are part of the demon fighting force. Now that is a career. I can't tell you how long I've wanted to be a part of their team, but the lowest of the low are the shoulder variety. Consequently, I fit into this vein. My name is incomprehensible to humans, so I just go by Max whenever I reveal myself to them. I hate being a shoulder angel. It's just the job that angels get when they're too cynical. My cynicism stems from a lack of faith in humans. I know that God loves them, but they're so disappointing. Even the best of the best is just as bad as the worst of the worst. It's sad, really. I don't know how he manages to stick by them. Anyway, Gabriel, one of the highest angels, assigns one of us to a specific human, and we are tasked with helping him or her make the right decisions until they are spiritually mature enough to do so on their own. Satan down there does the same thing, but with the goal of tempting humans and spreading discord. I've been a part of the Shoulder Brigade for millennia, and I haven't shown much success. Gabriel is trying to build up an appreciation for humans in me that's been taking way too long to build. Thank God he is merciful. The problem is, I've heard buzzing around the office that if I blow it with my current human, I'll get kicked out of heaven. I don't really buy it, but it still stinks to be talked about like that, you know. Demons have their respective jobs too. Some possess people, some sow political discord, and some travel the world causing superstitions. Ever heard of Bigfoot, the Mothman, the Jersey Devil, El Chupacabra, or the Loveland Frog Man? Demons, baby. All of them. Shoulder demons are those who hate humans, but don't have the stones to torture them. Every demon is a fallen angel who is attracted by the perks that the devil offers to them, one of which was the freedom to take whatever form they pleased. There's no common form that demons take, and in my experience, I've seen them take thousands of them. One time, I met one who chose the appearance of a massive tadpole with a human face and 3 rows of razor-sharp teeth. Nastiest thing I've ever seen. All that being said, my current human is a moron. His name is Wendell, he's a kleptomaniac, and he is the most recent reason I have no faith in humans. You see, because Adam and Eve disobeyed God in the Garden of Eden, the human race is always inclined to do the wrong thing. As such, it makes it much easier for demons to influence their decisions, and it's much harder for angels. The slimy pustule that sits on Wendell's opposite shoulder is my least favorite part of my job. He's a demon, and his name is also incomprehensible to humans, so I've officially dubbed him Jerk. It's the most common way that I refer to him. I hate Jerk. He's an impish little turd, shaped like a tomato who mated with a cane toad. His horns curl upward, making half circles that join above his greasy scalp like a mock halo. His nose is long like an Italian grandfather's and constantly dripping in mucus. His voice is somewhat like Danny DeVito, except with none of the charm and all of the sarcasm. He's smug and lazy. Some days, he doesn't even show up to his perch. One time, he just left sticky notes on Wendell's shoulder, and he still managed to beat me that day. The kicker is, he's a master of the little things. He's a pro at getting Wendell to give in to smaller temptations that accumulate into larger sinful problems. Because of this strategy, Wendell is still recovering from kleptomania. The devil really is in the details. The worst part, I've been stuck with Jerk since the beginning. Just this one time, Lord, I prayed on Wendell's shoulder along the way to the hair salon. Can you please just give me one successful day? It's been thousands of years. Just let me have one meaningful success. You know what's funny? Jerk hacked, sitting ugly on Wendell's shoulder, mocking me. He can hear you, but he chooses not to do anything about it. It's a matter of his perfect timing, Jerk. Right, he grimaced. You keep telling yourself that. I wonder what our little boy is going to swipe next. What will it take for you to never call him that again? I nearly threw up in my mouth at these words. He's not going to steal a thing today, I said to him. That's what you said last week, and we all know what happened last week. Jerk was referring to my most recent string of failures. Like I said before, Wendell is a recovering kleptomaniac. Last week at his office job, he stole 3 ballpoint pens, 4 pencils, a stapler, ammunition for the stapler, 3 dozen paper clips. He made a necklace out of them. After work that Wednesday, he went on a grocery run to Walmart. On his way out, he made off with a can of that nasty Coca-Cola coffee stuff. Why did they make that? And a 2-pack of Twix bars. Then, on his way out, he realized that they were the right Twix, not the left ones, went back into the store, stole the left Twix, and then went home. No! Before you ask, he didn't put the lefties back.
He's getting his hair cut at the salon in the Walmart today, so I'm in high spirits,
Jerk guffawed. I've been praying relentlessly that today I can help him resist the temptation to steal, but things aren't looking up. Well, Jerk yawned, giving me a whiff of his pungent breath.
I think when we get to the store, I'll go say hi to some of the other winners. Maybe I'll spot another angel as pathetic as you. Word on the block is you're gonna get kicked down the stairs, if you know what I mean.
I wanted to punch him so badly, but that would have just made things worse. Also, I probably would have cut my hand on his nose. He was true to his word, though. Once we got to Walmart, he disappeared into the crowd. Okay, I took a deep breath. Let's do this. Everything was going fine. Wendell was polite to the stylist and sat down in her chair. I wanted him to get into a conversation with her. It's always good to hear other people's stories, and Wendell actually likes talking to people. It's one of the few things I respect about the little nerd. Things were going well. The two of them talked about life, living situations, and all the common hair salon icebreakers. As it turns out, the stylist had 2 kids. Both of them are boys. God bless her. Her husband left her for a high school sweetheart of his after they had their second son. She used to live in Louisiana, which just so happened to be where Wendell's weird uncle was from. That got them talking, joking, reminiscing. It was quite nice. Too nice. I knew that at any moment, Jerk would show up and ruin everything. The stylist heard one of her coworkers, a newbie to be sure, drop a can of hairspray on the floor. The noise it made upon impact made her jump, and to make matters worse, the top broke off of it. Wendell's stylist turned around and barked at the newbie for the next 5 minutes. In the mirror, Wendell spotted a shining green slip of paper in her back pocket, a crisp $20 bill. It must have been an extra-large tip that she was trying to hide from her coworkers. His eyes were fixed upon it. Immediately, I sprang into action. Wendell, it's not worth it. She's been so kind to you. She shared so much of her life with you. You can sympathize with her. She doesn't have a lot of money. Don't forget she's a single mom with 2 little boys. She needs that money. Wendell's gaze fell to the floor. He must have felt guilty for considering it. He was calm and collected. Just then I heard Jerk's rancid voice gurgling out of his throat.
Ain't it your nephew's birthday tomorrow? And don't you not know what he's into? And didn't you forget your PIN number again?
Wendell never really needed a reason to steal anything in the past, but when he has one, it's even harder to swim. No! I screamed and hurled myself at that incessant gargoyle, knocking him off of Wendell's shoulder and colliding with the floor. I'm so close, damn you!
Oh, that's a no-no word, Maxie. You worship God with that mouth?
We rolled around on the salon floor, punching, kicking, kneeing, and biting. That last one was him, mostly. We tussled for a few minutes, and then Jerk got me in a headlock. While I was choking, I noticed Wendell's expression. Poor guy was a mess. Both sides of his conscience were beating each other to putty. So as a result, he was jittering violently in his chair while the stylist was trying to cut his hair. Hold still, hon. She was getting a little uncomfortable. Wendell would be still for a second, but his head would jerk the moment the razor touched his hair. I had to get back onto his shoulder. I groped around for something to help break me free. The first thing I found was the cord of a curling iron dangling from the top of the stylist's counter. I was able to stretch just enough to grab it. Then I plunged it into Jerk's bulging, bloodshot eye. He screeched in pain while trying to pry it out. That was my chance. I tried to leap back onto Wendell's shoulder, but Jerk snagged my ankle with the cord and I face planted onto the floor. He started dragging me towards him, but I managed to untangle my ankle from the cord. I wrapped it around my wrist for leverage and yanked it with everything I had. Jerk came flying towards me and I spiked him to the floor with a single punch right between his beady little eyes. As he was dazed, I grabbed him by one of his many chins, craned my neck back, and smashed his nose in with my forehead. Not as pointy as I expected. Jerk was down for the count. It took me a second to process everything that just happened. Did I really just beat Jerk? No, not yet. I still have something to do. I leapt onto my perch and helped Wendell clear his head. He calmed down, but he had a rude awakening. His hair was a mess. In the end, he just asked the stylist to buzz him clean. You don't need to tip me, hon, she chuckled. I was distracted. Some freaky stuff was going on. Making the cord to my dang curling iron act all snaky-like. I don't know what came over me. A slight grin appeared on Wendell's face. My head felt like it was being stretched. It wasn't your fault, though. Here, get your boys a little something. He tipped her a $10 bill. The stylist almost cried. Her eyes were welling up with tears as she thanked Wendell for the tip. You come back here again, and if you ask for any other stylist, I will beat the stuffing out of you. I'm gonna be honest. I was impressed with him. I didn't even try to compel him to leave the $10 bill. It was a victory. Not only did Wendell refrain from stealing, but he also left a generous tip. That night, while he was sleeping, I was asked to return to heaven and report to Gabriel in his office. His office was gigantic. His desk was a brilliant, glittering gold. The floor was glimmering marble, and the pillars were studded with gemstones from across several color spectrums, most of which are not visible to the human eye. He was sitting in an emerald swivel chair. Something was weird, though. Hanging on the wall behind his desk was an Employee of the Week picture, and my face was in it. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Gabriel himself is harder to describe than most angels. Let's see, what would make sense? Okay, he has bright, long auburn hair. Today it was tied in a man bun. Not neatly, though. His face is chiseled. His smile is bright and wide, and his teeth are pearlier than a clam. He's tall, almost frighteningly so, and he wears a suit and tie covered in eyes. Don't worry, they're not real. It's just symbolism. That was quite the show, my man. He talks like youth pastor. Or Doug Bradbury. I didn't think you had it in you. You got some serious guts. Does this mean I can join the demon fighting force? I threw it out as a joke, but part of me wanted it desperately. Gabriel laughed. He stood up from his chair and sat down on the front of the desk. His legs were dangling off of it. Turns out he was wearing board shorts and flip-flops with the rest of his suit. Nah, man, your work on Earth ain't over yet. I sulked at the sound of these words. Guess I'll be here for another millennium. All right, how much trouble am I in for picking a fight with Jerk? Trouble? My man, you've achieved quite the dub today. It took me a second to realize he meant I won. Wendell feels convicted. This day was really good for him. But he's still going to need you around to help him out. Not to mention, you gave quite the licking to that shoulder demon. I think he's intimidated. I thought violence was never the answer. I was getting a little confused. Wow, dude, you really have been on Earth for too long. Violence between humans is never the answer. We have different rules for dealing with demons. They deserve a good beating from time to time. How'd it feel? Finally putting that punk in his place. Felt good. I grinned. Is there anything else you need before I leave? Nah, man. You're pretty much golden. Thanks, Gabe. I turned to go back to Earth, but I stopped. You know, Gabe, I kind of like Wendell. He's all right. I think he's worth helping. They're all worth helping, Max, he said, smiling warmly. One day you'll realize that. When you do, I'll be happy to write your letter of recommendation to the demon fighting force. I'm positive that Commander Mike would be happy to have you.
George Della Piazza. And now, ladies and gentlemen, it's time to reveal the chimes. The editor-in-chief, Ronnie Darnell, midwife of art on campus, is about to deliver yet another bundle of glory into our eager hands and hearts. On the count of 3, 2, 1, go, yell chimes. 3, 2, 1, go! And now, go get yourself a copy, have some snickety snacks, and come back in 10 minutes for part 2. Welcome back. I want to tell two stories about Laura. One is based on facts. The other is completely true. I know it's true because I was there. Story one. Here are the facts from her sister Hannah. Laura's favorite things: Star Wars, Harry Potter, pirates, and making terrible decisions. Things she hates, according to Hannah: arrogant people, bad writing, and anyone mentioning she had a sexy poster of Kylo Ren on her wall for a solid 4 years. When Laura was a kid, she and her siblings and the neighbor children would pretend to be characters from Star Wars and Clone Wars. Also, Avatar: The Last Airbender, which always sounds to me like someone who can make their farts go wherever they want them to. Around corners, through keyholes, even into an enemy's mouth. Hannah said this, and I quote, "When we were kids, she would always pretend to be the love interest character to the neighbor boy she liked." In other words, if they were playing Avatar: The Last Airbender and he was Aang, she was Katara. If it was Clone Wars and he was Anakin, she was Padme. If it was Star Wars and he was Luke, she was Leia. Here's some of Laura's favorite things according to her roommates: Treasure Island, Peter Pan, and Hannibal the Cannibal. And now for a short story based on facts. It's called It Better Not Be the Last. In the story, the neighbor boy, whose name I do know, will be called Jaden. I don't like the name Jaden because I've never met a Jaden who needs to exist. If you're out there, Jaden, and you can convince me otherwise, we can talk after the show. Poor Jaden. Once upon a time, Laura was having a conversation with a sexy Kylo Ren poster. "Oh, Kylo," said Laura. And because her imagination is so good, she could literally hear Kylo when he answered, "My darling." "What are you up to today?" "I'm gonna play with the neighbors." "What are you gonna play? Star Wars, Harry Potter, pirates, Airbender," which just sounds like someone who can direct their farts around corners, "Treasure Island, Peter Pan." "No," said Laura. "Silence of the Lambs." "Let me guess," Kylo said. "Jaden's gonna be Hannibal the Cannibal and you're gonna be Clarice." "Other way around," said Laura, "but yes." She went with her siblings over to the neighbor's house. They used the garden shed as Hannibal the Cannibal's prison cell. "Who gets to be Hannibal?" Jaden asked. Laura thought the answer might be obvious because she was wearing a homemade bite guard mask and had wheeled herself over on a hand truck. But Jaden answered his own question, "Guess it's me." Then he marched into the shed. "I don't want to play serial killer games," said Laura's brother Glenn. "Let's play Peter Pan." "Sorry, Glenn," said Laura, "but Peter Pan is a serial killer." "No, he's not." "Glenn, he's killed hundreds of pirates, hundreds, and lost boys. Look it up." His psychopathy is off the charts, but here, she handed Glenn the Peter Pan hat she always carried with her. Other items she always carried: a lightsaber, a copy of Treasure Island, a Ahsoka Tano face paint, Mentos, and a locket with the pictures of two lovers inside, Loki and Jesse Eisenberg. In case you didn't know, Jesse Eisenberg is an American actor who no one has a crush on except Laura Miller. Because Eisenberg looks like someone grown in a test tube and someone who grew up in bigger and bigger test tubes until someone added hair in places and put him in movies. "Who's gonna interview the cannibal?" said Jaden. "Fine," said Laura. "I'll be FBI Special Agent Clarice Starling." "Big surprise," said Hannah. "Shut up, trash," said Laura. FBI Special Agent Clarice Starling stepped up to the cell of psychotic genius and cannibalistic serial killer Hannibal Lecter. "Hello, Clarice," said Jaden. "Dr. Lecter," said Laura. Then Jaden said, "All this talk makes me hungry for cannibalism." "I have just the thing," said Laura. "Peter Pan, get in here." With his fists on his hips, Peter Pan leapt into the shed, accidentally mistaking it for somewhere safe. Suddenly he realized he was in the holding cell of Hannibal. At first, Peter Pan refused to be eaten, but when Laura threatened to expel him from the game, Peter relented and was eaten. Next, Lecter escaped using Peter Pan's hat as a disguise, and his face. The freed killer said to Clarice, "Hello, Clarice. Who should I kill now?" Clarice said, "Let me think. Hannah." Hannah was next. Now, the only two left alive were FBI Special Agent Clarice Starling and Hannibal Lecter. "What do we do now, Clarice?" "If we're being faithful to the text," Laura said, "there's a kiss at the end." She was taking a risk. She prayed Jaden didn't read. Jaden, who didn't read, asked, "Who does the kissing?" Laura said, "Well, Hannibal has this moment of pure humanness and passion, and he kisses, believe it or not, FBI Special Agent Clarice Starling." Jaden jumped back into the role, strode up to Laura, and kissed her. And in the kiss, which lasted 1.5 seconds, Laura realized Jaden was not the one. If he had been, he would have had an imagination like hers, and would have done what she would have done if she had cannibalized Peter Pan and then kissed an FBI agent. She would have interrupted the kiss mid-kiss with a mimed belch of the imagined gas from digesting Peter Pan meat and said, "Tastes like an awfully big adventure." After the kiss was over, Hannibal opened his eyes and said, "Well, Clarice?" But FBI Special Agent Clarice Starling was long gone, already home again, with Kylo, their lips entwined. Without warning, Kylo sent a belch into her mouth, down her throat, and to her heart. Then he said, I call that kiss the airbender." And Laura said, "It better not be the last." And now for an even more true story. Once upon a time, I was teaching in the McCartney room of the library, the bell tower room. Legend tells that if a class has spirit enough, they get to follow me up onto the roof of the bell tower. And that class had spirit. Why? Laura was there. She had enough spirit for all of us. We opened the secret door in the wall, the door which opens into the attic space above the west reading room. From there, we removed the aluminum ladder and extended it to the trap door in the McCartney room ceiling high above. I climbed to the hatch overhead and pushed open the trap door. While this was happening, while I was 15 feet in the air, dangling from the last thread of my job security, Laura heard footsteps on the stairs spiraling up and up toward the classroom door. "Librarian," she hissed. And I watched from the ceiling, horrified. I couldn't move without making too much noise on the ladder. I was trapped. But Laura somehow seemed perfectly at ease. The look of worry had disappeared from her face and was replaced by the eerie calm of someone who's been in trouble so many times. She knows exactly what to do. She crept to the closed door, pressed her shoulder against it, and when someone knocked and said, "Everything okay in there? I heard a sound." Laura said through the door in a hushed and solemn voice, "We're praying." "Oh," said the librarian. "Yeah," said Laura. "Okay, sorry," the librarian left. Once the librarian's footsteps died away, Laura went to work fashioning a message to tape outside the door, one that would secure our safety while we were heading for the sky. She posted her notice, closed the door again. Then we all climbed, and, thanks to Laura, no one stopped us from reaching the roof and carving our names into the RP stones with our pirate knives. The message she wrote hangs on my office door. It's written on a piece of Christian notepad paper. The verse printed at the top, Ecclesiastes 3:11, "He has made everything beautiful in its time." And Laura's message: intensive studying lecture. Please do not disturb. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you the lady of danger, of prayer, of intensive study, of adventure, Geneva's pirate, Laura Miller.
I'd like to formally apologize to any library staff present. Some of these stories may have been fictionalized. May have been. For those unaware, we have no idea what Dr. Williams will say about us. The only clues we get is whatever we can pry out of those close to us that we know he went for blackmail. I mean introductions. I'm gonna have to kill my sister now. But anyway, I have some writing to share, just a recycled blog post sandwiched between a couple poems. I'll start by saying that I have a 2-part confession to make, so buckle up, lads. The first one is that I struggle with identity. I don't know who I'm supposed to be, which is a pretty important bit to be missing when I go off into the real world in 2 weeks. Or 3, I can't do math. But here's the thing. I don't think any of us know for certain who God has called us to be, and maybe that's part of the adventure. It doesn't feel right, now at least, and I kind of doubt it ever will, but if I'm honest, I wanted to share a couple different identities that I've tried on for size. I'm going to start with one I'm a bit ashamed of, even though Dr. Williams has already given you a couple. Thank you. A long, long time ago, I wanted to be a skateboarder. Yes, I can hear everyone who knows that I can't stand upright, let alone walk in a straight line. But I'm serious. At 11, I got a skateboard from my mama and used it a grand total of once. I realized I was too afraid to fall, and quite possibly more afraid of making an idiot of myself in front of Jaden. Because Jaden had exited the womb on a skateboard. My envy has waxed and waned over the years, but returned with a vengeance once I came to Geneva and found them here. Here is my bitter response to the skateboarders on campus. I give you the skateboard chant. Shattered peace on summer days, roaring wheels turning faster and faster, eating gravel and spitting it back as it comes closer and closer. Shoulders start to tense, grimaces split faces. Eyes begin to narrow as heads turn, looking for the abuser of solemnity. There, a ratty kid in cut-off jeans and high-top sneakers, head held high above the rest. We are but mortals to the god of the flat chariot. Turning towards each other, scowling at the menace, we bow our heads, whispering to a darker master. The chant begins, a slow, low, steady hum. Picking up pace, matching the turning of the wheels, begging, pleading, bargaining for blood. Board of wood, split in two. Wheels of urethane meet your match. Pavement of cement turn to barbs of steel. Grass of earth hide rocks and shattered glass. Shirt of cotton, tear to shreds in ways unrecognizable as fashion. Blood of veins, leave scarlet stains that never dry. Knees of flesh, split open and never heal. Heel of hand, sting with all the fire of Satan's hell. Chin of face, scar in disfigured ways. Border of the skate, my wish for you is nothing but utter annihilation. But he continues on his way, gliding over pavement without a thought, his vertical existence mocking our creed, defying all we pray for. Our God is dead. Moving on, I have a cool blog post that I wrote encapsulating my next identity. I tried to keep with the theme of cool. I moved on to being a spy. which is way cooler than a dork who pokes around in stuff that they shouldn't. I've always wanted to be a spy, but the Alex Rider kind, not James Bond. Complete with a Game Boy that can check for bugs in the walls, zit cream that melts metal, and a yo-yo that doubles as a grappling hook. And definitely lacking the steady stream of short-lived love affairs. I'd rather have a steady relationship built on anything but lies about my secret identity. Of course, my secret identity would put my loved ones at risk, so I wouldn't be able to tell anyone, but I'd have secret missions around the world. Before I could go on missions, I'd have to prove myself to the secret organizations. They were, of course, watching my every move. I had no doubt that a far-back relative of mine was a spy, perhaps my great-grandmother, who I had heard was raised by the Amish, but escaped. That no doubt set in motion the secret organization's plan to watch her descendants to see if any could be a spy, which of course meant me. I read my weight in Nancy Drew, Hercule Poirot, and A to Z mystery novels to prepare myself for the inevitable. I was going to be a spy, and spies had to be smart, which meant more mystery novels. I added choose-your-own-ending clue novels to my list. And I started snooping. Sadly, there weren't many mysteries to solve when I was homeschooled, but there were plenty of drawers to paw through in my parents' room. I found old IDs of my dad and laughed at his slowly receding hairline. But ever-present mustache. I would have uncovered more mysteries if there hadn't been a millipede crawling through the drawer at me. Still, my thirst for mystery was unquenched. I searched for more places to discover secrets. My youth pastor would literally have to pick me up and carry me out of his office when he found me wandering around, opening drawers and looking through his mail. He told me I'd get in trouble one day if I kept snooping, but, of course, I ignored him. What did he know of my life as a spy? Not much, that's what. Although I am much more dignified and astute spy now, being over 2 decades old, it is sometimes my lack of any form of observation skills that gets me in trouble. I'd like to argue that it's due to my absence of any formal training. It isn't my fault that secret organizations watching me believe that I am too good to go to their secret academy. Unfortunately, my observation skills have gotten quite a bit rusty. For instance, I picked up a job at my college campus. Oh, look, here we are. That deals with delivering documents. As an ambassador for the administration of correspondence, I travel far and wide across my campus delivering packages and letters. That can mean dragging huge packages of what feel like rocks up 3 flights of stairs or getting lost in buildings I do not attend classes in. I'm looking at you, S&E.
You're welcome.
Because of my tireless work ethic, I feel it is right to treat myself to whatever candy the secretaries leave on their desks. Most of the time, it's stale gummies, chocolates that have developed a white film, or worst of all, lifesavers. The best place I've found to raid is our admissions office. They have a mini fridge stocked with Coke products for visiting students, and given my role as a visitor delivering correspondences, I am entitled to raid. Don't shake your head at me, Michaela. Mickey, I'm sorry. Across from the admission office is IA. And I know what you're thinking. They flipped artificial intelligence. It's supposed to be AI. No, IA stands for something called institutional advancement, which is fancy talk, I think, for we have all of your money. The second time I delivered mail to them, I realized they had a mini fridge too. I dropped their mail on the secretary's desk, she was never there, and walked over to the black fridge. It was completely identical to the one in admissions. Hoping they might have Pepsi products, I walked over to it. I didn't hesitate. I didn't listen for footsteps. I didn't look around. I didn't even come up with a pretense to look inside. Just popped it open and saw a handful of lunches marked with different names. I didn't even have a moment to process my disappointment before someone coughed from behind me. I slammed the fridge shut, most likely causing someone's lunch to fall off the door into someone else's, and turned towards the voice. The woman was pursing her lips and frowning at the same time. I was ready to die on the spot. So, do we have any mail? I shook my head. My voice caught in my throat. I couldn't panic. I didn't do anything wrong. I just peeked. Why was she glaring? I swallowed my tongue and tried to play innocent. Where's your outgoing mail? Her eyes said, not in the damn fridge. But she said in a sweet voice, Down the hall on your right. She watched me the whole way down. I nodded and sped walked away, thankful to escape. I had kept my cool despite being caught red-handed. Maybe I am a spy after all. Okay, so as you can tell, these identities haven't exactly worked out. At least not yet. So I guess that leaves me with my last bit tonight, and it's a poem that might be a little on the nose for the theme, but who cares? It's true at least, because I wish I was a pirate. I wish I was a pirate, sailing the sea reflecting stars. Do we sail over constellations, or are they watching from above? I wish I was a captain, watching o'er the crew. I spy sharp peaks ahead, peeking back at me. Land ho, I cry. The crew stampedes the deck. Planks creak in protest, but are ignored, as the thirst for treasure parches every tongue. I wish I held the map to treasure, leading crew along the way, but there's something in the breeze, or maybe I mistook, that evil eye from coxswain, or boatswain's scowling look. The breeze brings chills, but perhaps that's just my fear. Dead grass crunching underfoot. The sand piles in my boots. Each step forward feels like a step towards certain doom. I wish that I could count 50 paces past the grove of palms. The map is damp in my hands. Against my fear, a new emotion rises, excitement igniting my being, as we follow the compass's shaking hand. Here lies the gold, lads, I'd cry, armed with shovels and black and broken nails. We'd bat away the sand, digging deeper, deeper, deeper. Thonk. The chest is heavy, it takes 3 men to lift. Nut brown and sturdy, cracked with age, copper lining its edge. All lean forward except one. One stays back and watches through beady eyes. He reaches into thick blue coat, fingers straining for his sword. Quick as a blink, the steel is drawn and his boot is on the booty. I thank ye, gents, for digging this ear up, but I'll be taking it off your hands. A few men step up beside him, their blades whistling out of sheaths. Me and me crew thank ye kindly for your help, but we got it from here. Don't want no trouble. He tips his hat, daring me to oppose him and his band of mutineers. I wish that I were brave, enough to stand and draw my cutlass, and stare him in the eye. To Davy Jones' locker with you, I'd cry. The slash of steel and tang of blood, fresh scarlet sprinkling the sand, cries of agony and rage rising above the wind. I wish to suffer a wound, but nothing mortal. Gritting my teeth, I'd switch hands, for of course, I fight with both. When he begs for mercy, I'd pause to say, I'll show you what mercy you'd give us, then plunge my sword into his pulsing heart. I wish to raise my scarlet sword above my head and cheer as the rest retreat. We'd bury honest sailors and leave the rest to rot, then return to the ship weighed down by gold, but glorying in success. But I'll be straining for that next island, eager for the next attack, that next battle, that next adventure. And don't worry, I'll get there soon enough. Just close my eyes and imagine skies sailing onward out of sight.
Let's hear it again for Geneva's pirate, Laura Miller. Here are a few of Caleigh's favorite things. Studying the Civil War, the book Little Women, historical dramas, Captain America, stubbornness, and doing things the hard way. Here are some things she hates: large crowds, public speaking, and doing things the easy way. A dream of hers to write a novel, and now a Caleigh story. It's called I Can Do This All Day. Once upon a time, a big and beautiful tree was cut down at Geneva College. I don't know if you know this, but sometimes it takes a stump a while to figure out it's over. Its thirsty roots continue to drink and send the drink up and up. Sometimes the water climbs the ghost tunnels remaining in the air from where the tree used to be, and you have something called a water tree. In sunlight, the branches are rainbows. But water tree rainbows are rare in Pennsylvania, for there is no sunlight here. Only sadness. At other times, if the stump is drawing from deep enough in the earth, from water old when the world was young, it will grow a creature. And though this is very rare, it is what happened with the stump on Geneva's campus. This stump, drinking from an ocean 10 miles down, grew a Caleigh. Maybe some of you remember seeing her sitting on the stump reading a book or just watching birds and butterflies, saying, "Hello, fellow creatures, what stumps are you from?" She was a magical creature and therefore loved writing. In other words, she was a person on whom life was not a waste. She wrote poetry and stories, essays and plays. And one day, she looked up from her writing, realized she was on a college campus, and decided to enroll. You would think loving writing so much would have caused her to become a writing major. But you have to remember, Caleigh was the love child of an ocean and a stump. In other words, the most unpredictable and stubbornest thing ever conceived. So she became a history major, delaying her writing career by the length of a useless history career. She loved how much she hated writing academic papers, because suffering felt right to this willful creature. And the more she learned about history, the more she learned that history is completely subjective, a riddle that can never be solved. And because of how wrong it felt spending her considerable talent on unsolvable riddles, she knew it was right. Occasionally, though, when a moment of weakness struck her, she would do something she actually liked and read novels. Though they were historical novels, stories about people trying to fall in love during the Elizabethan period, a time when people wore so many layers of clothing some had not had contact with even their own slippery slopes for years. In other words, Jane Austen. An English writer known for her novels, which comment upon the British landed gentry at the end of the 18th century, and which make far better movies than books because of a modern concept called entertainment. One day, while reading an Austen book and, of course, longing for the movie, Caleigh was approached by 3 figures. One of them, Laura, took a look at Caleigh's book and said, "Ah, Pride and Prejudice. Sick movie. Dumpster fire of a book, though." "You've read it?" Caleigh asked. Laura said, "Of course not." "Oh," said Caleigh, "you should read it. It's terrible." "I'm good," said Laura. "Hey, why read Austen when you could read fantasy trash like Mytch?" Mytch was another one of the 3 and fought with Laura, rolling around on the ground. While they fought, another of the 3 named Mickey said to Caleigh, "You shouldn't live on a stump. You should room with us." Said Caleigh, "Sounds too comfortable, too easy." "Trust me, it's not easy," said Mickey. "We fight all the time and have to watch friendships that were healthy with a little distance become toxic. And we're really filthy. You'll probably be cleaning up after us all the time. Trust me, it's not an easy life." Caleigh said, "I'm in." Life in the apartment was exactly what Mickey promised. Though the girls loved one another, there was considerable strife. For example, one time Caleigh was in her room attempting to write a literary historical novel about the Civil War, all in second person with a feather quill, because that's the most difficult way to write a book. And Laura burst in, dressed like a pirate, and threw a sword at Caleigh and said, "Let's fight and talk about our feelings all night forever and never do our schoolwork forever, ever, right now." Caleigh considered, then said, "That would make writing my book more difficult, so I'm tempted. But I'm at a really good part where my Union officer is trying to say I love you to Penelope before getting blown up in the war, but he can't because smallpox took his face. He's just skin with a hole now, like a rump without the cheeks. But he's such a gentleman." Laura said nothing because Laura was gone, having stormed off, muttering, "We don't say no to Laura." Later that night, when Caleigh was out on a walk in the dark, in the rain, in the cold, for Caleigh reasons, Laura snuck into Caleigh's room, grabbed the literary historical novel manuscript about the Civil War, all in second person and written with a feather quill, and threw it on the fire in the fireplace. When Caleigh returned, drenched, freezing, and attempting to will herself a case of consumption, which was the plot of all her favorite books, she smelled a strange aroma in the house, burning paper, nay, parchment. Then she remembered Laura, the eye patch, the sword, the hook hand, the hat, the mustache, and remembered that while in pirate mode, Laura is capable of anything, everything, even... Caleigh rushed to the fireplace, and there were the curling pages of her burning manuscript. It was burning up so fast it would soon be gone completely. "No," she cried, then rushed outside, then rushed back inside carrying a stick. Then she rushed into the kitchen, then rushed back to the fireplace, and now upon the stick there was a marshmallow. She sat before her burning pages and roasted the marshmallow, eager to know what it would taste like when seasoned with a story. In other words, what it would be like to eat a story. She hummed happily as she cooked, and then Laura, her head hanging low, entered the room accompanied by Mytch and Mickey, who stood on either side of her, dragging her. "Caleigh," said Mytch, her eyes running with tears. "Caleigh," said Mickey, her eyes also running with tears. "Laura has something to tell you." "Oh, I know," said Caleigh. "She burned my book." Then she turned and showed them the golden marshmallow, a beauty, which she popped into her mouth, and just as she suspected, stories are delicious. "But Caleigh," said Mickey, "now you have to write your book all over again, all that work lost, and..." "Wait a second. Why did you use the stick to roast a marshmallow instead of using it to save your book? Did you just purposely make writing a book even more difficult for yourself? Don't you ever get tired of doing things the hard way? You can't keep living like this." And Caleigh, her mouth full of marshmallow, said, "What?" said the three. Caleigh said again, "What?" Finally, Caleigh finished the marshmallow, and she said, "I can do this all day." Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Caleigh McCready.
Oh my goodness. All right, I'm going to have to take a moment to recover from that. When Dr. Williams asked me to read for GRS, I thought about the parts of my story that I wanted to share, because there are people here that I know and people here that I don't, so how do I introduce myself, other than the gloriously true tales that precede me? I've decided to share 4 poems of different shapes and sizes that all highlight different moments, movements, and parts of me. Tying them all together in theme, I think, is some kind of reflection on God's grace in each of them. So to start, a poem about something I prayed for when I was 6. This is called Wild Raspberries. A Tupperware half full of wild raspberries, staining the mouth of a girl who has seen 6 summers, laughing with the other half of the harvest already eaten, skipping along the wide, fresh-cut paths at the edge of the wood. She is taught by her aunt to keep enough for the jam, and by her cousins to eat as she goes. Squishing the dark, sun-ripened berries in her enthusiasm, she eats the imperfect and the too perfect. The seedy summer sweetness of a few make up for puckery bitterness of ones picked too soon. That night, she tumbles into bed at home, her bedroom mostly in boxes, in the little lamplit room bordered with ladybugs, hand-painted by her grandma, and soon to be painted over, crisp and blank again. The first place she would ever remember leaving. After sacred and savored bedtime stories and sitting with her dad that night, she prays, on a whim, for raspberry bushes at her new home. Months later, when she explores the new little white house, sitting in a wide, sloping green yard, her dad would call her over and show her 2 raspberry bushes at the corners of a sagging shed, the plants crooked and sparse, but alive enough to bear fruit. 10 years later, displaced twice since then and finding a new home again, her dad would remind her of her prayer, once again answered, as she walks around a huge patch of brambly, berry-laden bushes, eating as she goes with a Tupperware half full of wild raspberries. This next one I had forgotten I had written until I went searching this past week for more to share. And I remembered that when I had written this one for a poetry class that I took with Dr. Williams had confessed it and made him cry. So I'm here to do that again. This is about my great-grandfather who passed away 2 years ago, and it's called Long Goodbyes. My family is fond of long goodbyes, ones that take winding rabbit trails to get to the car. There's a clamor down the porch steps at the first farewell, then realization in the slow shuffling of gravel. They'll forget to say something about someone or other or add on to a subject I thought they'd finished long ago. You never leave it goodbye, and you can never predict when you'll actually go. There was one goodbye, though, that I wished lasted longer. Traipsing in on a blustery Sunday in December down sanitized hallways on terminally scuffed tile, my grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins, and us all gathered around my great-grandpa, sitting in a wheelchair with a meal hardly touched. His coffee a brown sludge and the sole of his shoe coming apart, but his high tenor voice still rang out in the narrow halls, crowded with us. It used to be that he could take you down the rabbit trails best, forever and forever in an endless string of stories. That is what made him immortal in my mind. The sturdy trunk of our family tree that was here to stay. We all went up and shook his hand, and when it came to me, he looked up and smiled. "Your hands are cold," he teased. "My hands are always cold," I laughed. Too many people, and I got lost in the blur of listening to each conversation. "I think we'll need to get you new shoes. Is Stacy coming up for Christmas? Liam, hold still for a couple more minutes." We soon enough found ourselves in the way, but it ended differently than it usually does. No shifting around nurses in blue scrubs to linger as they moved annoyed around us. When we decided to leave, we actually meant it the first time. I went up to my great-grandpa and grasped his hands, his good one arthritic and his crippled one with a long scar that I had always known him by. "Your hands are still cold," he said, blue eyes shining. And he winked, and that was goodbye. This one is a newer one that I wrote on Wednesday night. And I kind of wrote it out of rebellion because whenever I workshop a poem, Dr. Williams always says, "Give me more." Like, this is great, but give me more. So I wrote a short poem. This is called A Prayer. Teach me to live like the lilies, broken open in bloom. This is beauty that gives. Can a flower truly delight in the radiance of the sun without first being a seed, fallen in the dust, buried in the darkness of dirt, and broken open to sprout? In faith it takes root and trusts in what it cannot see, by remembering what it has not yet lived. In hope, a stem pushes through the dark, reaching for spring, through pain, with eyes wide open and counting it all grace. Then to surface, to bud, and choose to open their arms to sun and wind and rain, to a life honey sweet and aching, brimming full and brief. And this last one is about a guy who I didn't end up with. But this poem still makes me happy and reminds me so much of how God works in unexpected ways. This is called Honey. I like this kind of sunshine, the kind that looks like light through a honey jar, the light that if it had a sound would be somewhere between the thoughtful hum of the cellos and bees, the champagne bubble laughter of trumpets, the homespun tang of a folk song found in the heart of a harmonica, a smattering of rain, broken piano chords, and two voices whose hearts hear the harmonies warm and sweet and full. It reminds me of golden-drenched moments with him, sitting at a coffee shop, walking under trees, the beginning of a long drive home. Memories of him are honey, amber nostalgia, slowly dripping, drizzling, spinning sticky puddles, the feelings that forever stick to my hands. I'll never forget, I met him in the wilderness wandering, arms full and wondering how I could walk along a path where I didn't know where I was headed. Then I met him, and he was the smell of hazelnut coffee in the early morning, the effervescence of afternoon light through the leaves, and the warmth of a campfire on a cold night. He was strong and sincere and kind. I think he was carrying something heavy too, something that made him hesitate, yet in spite of everything, he dropped his guard to hold my hand, and we walked together for a while. And there, in some sort of shattered symphony of endings and growing pains, we found glimpses of beauty, the fields, clover, and flowers that bees turn into nectar, the kind that brings healing. He helped me remember a song called Hope, and matched me in a stride I knew to be faith, and we talked often of the love that had brought us back. I wanted to live in that moment forever, and linger in the spirit of a tune, not to get stuck in a sugary sentiment long after he's left, but to have something real that keeps me moving towards home. For when the summer sunshine with its smiling blue-eyed sky is gone, it seems easier to try to wash it all away. But even in the afterglow, I can't bury the golden feeling deep enough to forget that I was given a wondrously sweet mystery, a manna that nourished, and I am learning to delight while open-handedly trusting in daily grace, in one who gives and takes away. His absence left an ache, but it isn't empty or filled with regret because I remember honey doesn't come easy. It takes work, like love in the long run, but isn't it sweet to know and be known? Honey, even when it hurts, it's worth holding on to what is good. Thank you.
Hear it again for Caleigh. Just close your eyes for just a minute and imagine you're on a ship. You're all gonna drown. Once upon a time, Aphrodite, goddess of hotness, checked herself out in a mirror for so long that she conceived. Yep. She then sexily belched a warm wind of pregnancy. And the fecund belch sprayed droplets that struck the ground and invented the pomegranate, a fruit so provocatively swollen that many Christians will only eat it in the dark so as not to suffer a sensory overload. After her steamy baby belch, Aphrodite said, "I shall now name my son who was conceived of hotness, yea, the hottest son who ever was or ever will be. I shall call him Henry Cavill, pronounced Cavill, like travel, because that's how you pronounce it. Travel, Cavill." As soon as she uttered this sweet name, the pomegranate split under the pressure of its own voluptuousness and began to speak steamily a prophecy. "Born of a goddess's hotness, this man-child shall be so hot. And yet the hotness cannot save the child from death by the sting of his own heavy fruit." "His heavy fruit?" said Aphrodite. "Do you mean his—" "No." "I mean his heart." And Aphrodite's like, death, not for my Henry. I'll make him invulnerable. I have to protect his heavy fruit. You're right, said the pomegranate. I hear it now. When you say his heavy fruit, it does sound like his package. But it was my first prophecy. I'll get better. Clarity is the real issue here. But next time, Aphrodite ate the pomegranate so it would stop talking. Then she suffered a sensory overload and immediately gave birth to Henry. Next, she and baby Henry journeyed to the land of the dead, to the river Styx, and got in the long, long baby dipping line. Goddess after goddess dipped baby after baby, and Aphrodite paid attention to how the dipping was done. One dip only, said the river guardian. Every baby emerged invincible, nearly invincible, for their goddesses had to hold them by some part of the baby, leaving that part vulnerable. For example, the baby Samson was dipped by his hair. The baby Homer the poet was dipped by his eyes. Baby King David was dipped by his codpiece. Aphrodite watched and realized she had to dip Henry. She had to dip her son by a part that couldn't easily endanger him later. When it was finally her turn, she stepped up to the river Styx and was super happy she'd followed the questionable practice of never severing her son's umbilical cord. She used it to sling her precious son into the river. And then she fished him out. Once he was on shore, Aphrodite, with a tear of motherly sadness, cut the line between them. And off she went, Aphrodite continuing to be hot and to make her parents, Mr. and Mrs. C. Foam, proud. While Henry grew into a man so hot, even God took notice and said, "Damn, nation." Once upon a little time later, there lived a young woman named Mytch. She was out in the woods one day, farther out than ever before, writing stories and poetry and drawing and painting, because she could do all those things, when suddenly she heard a sorrowful sound, bitter weeping. She peeked around a tree and saw a little sunlit orchard, and on a stump in the orchard sat a golden treasure chest. The weeping came from inside the treasure chest. Mytch approached carefully. She saw little holes bored in the lid, breathing holes it seemed. When she was close enough to speak, she spoke. "Hello?" The crying stopped. Then, from within the treasure chest, a tiny voice said, "Henry?" "No," said Mytch. "I'm Mytch." "Mytch," said the voice. "Your name makes you sound like a cool rebel artist." "Exactly," said Mytch. "Now, why are you crying?" "I miss Henry," said the voice. "It's been days and days since I've seen him. I fear something terrible has happened." "Why are you in that golden treasure chest?" said Mytch. "To keep Henry safe, you see. If I get hurt, he gets hurt. And it's very easy for me to get hurt, so I have to be in here." "Can you ever come out?" "Never." "Well, look," said Mytch, "how about this? I'm not Henry, but I'm friendly, to my friends anyway, and you sound sad. I'll help you out of there, and if anyone tries to hurt you, I'll tear out their kneecaps." This made the little voice laugh. "What's your name, by the way?" asked Mytch. "Bill," said the voice. That's a nice name, Bill. I like it. Bill said, it's short for umbilical. What an interesting name, said Mytch. It's Greek. Okay, you can let me out. And she did, picking the lock and throwing open the lid. There he was, Bill. An umbilical cord indeed, long, veiny, boneless, pinkish purple, and beautiful. For he was the flesh of a goddess. If it's not too much trouble, Bill said, would you consider helping me find Henry? Well, that depends, said Mytch. And then she asked Bill her famous profiling question, a question that let her know if a person was worthy of her company and assistance. Depends on what? Said Bill. And then Mytch asked, want to play bears? Before Bill could answer, Mytch dropped onto all fours and started marching around like a bear, shouting, bears, bears. By the way, this is something Mytch actually did when she was a kid. She'd walk up to somebody, friend, stranger, it didn't matter, and she'd say, hey, want to play bears? And before they could answer, she'd drop into a bear stance and march away, shouting, bears, bears! I'm serious. Back to the story. Bill thought the game Bears was so delightful he hurriedly joined in, doing his best with his limp, moist body to march around like a bear, screaming, bears, bears. It's settled, said Mytch. I will help you find Henry. Let's drive. Soon they were roaring along in her big, beautiful car, a very fast car named Valkyrie. They drove and drove until up ahead, walking along the side of the road, Mytch spotted 3 hitchhikers. She stopped. Can I help you? The 3 rushed up to the window. We are but 3 humble travelers in desperate need of direction in our lives. We are sane when we're by ourselves, but together we are not. What are your names? We are Laura, Caleigh, and Mickey. I'll give you a lift, said Mytch, but first. Then she got out of the car, looked the 3 waifs straight in their wild eyes, and said, want to play bears? Before they could answer, she dropped to all fours and marched around yelling, bears, bears! Then, to her amazement, Laura, Caleigh, and Mickey dropped to their hands and marched around yelling, bears, bears! Mytch marveled, you are insane. Then she welcomed the hitchhikers aboard. As soon as they climbed in, they said, what's that? Pointing at the tube of flesh in the passenger's seat. Meat umbilical, said Mytch. Sounds Greek, said the 3. Thank you, said Bill. They drove until they reached a part of the woods called Hollywood, where they found Henry making a show called The Witcher. Unfortunately, it was the 2nd season, which sucks. Mytch couldn't believe it when Bill led her to Henry's trailer. Your Henry is my Henry, she said. Henry Cavill. Cavill as in travel. Travel, Cavill. That's how you pronounce it. That's my Henry. Just then, Henry Cavill opened his trailer door, locked eyes with Mytch, and said, I'm more than just a pretty face. Actually, that's not what he said. Though Henry's hot body was American, his voice was British. So what he really said was, Oi, I'm more than just a pretty face! But this was something he said to all women, and no one had yet believed him. He smiled with his handsome face, a face so handsome it was almost grotesque. Then he spotted Bill.
Bill?
He said.
Hello.
Then he became afraid.
What are you doing outside your golden treasure chest?
Just then, Aphrodite showed up in her car named Deus Ex Machina. And she shouted at Mytch, "You've stolen umbilical!" Then Bill said to Aphrodite,
No, she hasn't stolen me. She helped me get to Henry. She's Mytch and she's an artist.
But it was too late. Aphrodite gathered up her last postpartum belch, aimed it directly at Mytch's heart, and let loose. But just before the hot, wombish wind struck Mytch, Bill leapt in the way and received the brunt of the belch. It drove him directly into Mytch's heart, and the two, the heart and the umbilical cord, became conjoined, so much so that they could not be separated, and neither could live while the other did not. Mytch fell, but Henry Cavill caught her and cradled her in his powerful arms. Arms so deliciously bumpy they looked like pythons gorging on bushels of oily pomegranates. Aphrodite, seeing the love in her son's eyes, remembered the prophecy, death by the sting of his own heavy fruit. His own heavy fruit, said Aphrodite. It's not talking about his heart, but hers. Her heart is his heavy fruit, and his is hers. This woman who holds Bill in her heart, conjoined, is Henry's vulnerability, literally and figuratively. In other words, Henry's vulnerability is love. Aphrodite took Mytch's hands in hers and said, Mytch, will you marry my son and protect your precious heart and use your art to help my Henry make a watchable season 3 of The Witcher? Mytch said, I'll let you know in a second. Then she turned to Henry and asked, Want to play bears? Ladies and gentlemen, I give you our very own 5-part threat, a pentathreat, storyteller, poet, painter, illustrator, and I have tenure, badass Mytch.
Give me a second. Yeah, I can't follow up with that. Thanks, I guess. I will say, though, that was 100% true. And I am, in fact, joined soulmates with Henry Cavill, but only if he's dressed as Geralt of Rivia from The Witcher. So, the introductions typically, like, they're used to let you know things about somebody. I don't know what you could have gotten about me out of that, but I'll do with them what you will. But I wanted to start with a fact about me that might make some people angry, but that's okay. I used to hate poetry. Like, I could not stand poetry. I didn't understand what was so good about it. I didn't get rhythm, rhyme. I spat at the name Dickinson. I hated poetry. So anyway, I have poems I'm gonna read tonight. All right, another fact about me is, if you couldn't kind of tell, I really, really love fantasy. I love it as a genre. I just can't get enough of it. So the first poem I have to read is along that fantasy line, and it's about a fantasy novel that I finished writing last May. It's about the 4 central characters, and thank you. Most of you might not even know what the book's about, but hopefully you at least kind of like the poem. I wrote this also on Wednesday night, alongside Caleigh. So this poem, it's technically 4 short poems, all merged together. I tried to write a sonnet, but I gave up on the syllable stresses like 1 line in. So
This is called The Oracle, the Knight, the Mage, and the King. 1. Oracle. Awake, old eyes, and see a world unknown. Face your fears, swallow your dreams, and begin. Begin a life you did not ask for. Watch the sins of 1,000 men and the destruction of your own. Find yourself in an ethereal field, witness hundreds of prophecies, and meet the girl of a different land. Sense her power, find her in your dreams, and watch as she dies. Is her death a dream? A message? Warning. See her kingdom burn to ash and awake. Silver-eyed oracle, seek out the girl. Save her and her world. She is your answer. Oh. 2. Night. Red-haired knight, woman of the dream, bare your soul to the blade and fight. The bow and arrow are your lovers, daggers and dirks your long-lost friends. And rage. Rage against your own sight, sight which showed you the silver-eyed oracle. Find him again in a seedy alleyway, and hear his omen of death. Drink and be merry, for tomorrow you will die. Fight in the burning field for your mother, father, sister, brother, and the silver-eyed man. Fight with your rage until you meet your end. 3. Oh, okay. 3. Mage. They call you the mage cursed by lightning. A lightning spears through your core, and be coveted by enemies of gold and green, and lose your fight to them in this battle of ash. Be stripped of your heart, your past, enough to lose your name. Commanded by those you cannot see, witches who abuse, manipulate, and erase your mind clear of all your will. Out of your mind, lost in an abyss, kill everyone they command you so to. Strike them down with your ghostly light. Strike them down, even those that you loved. 4. King. Okay. At last, you, young king, commanding a war you did not wage. A poet in your... No, wait, not poet. I have dyslexia, I'm very sorry. A puppet in your dead father's game, whipped through the hands of men who seek to destroy the world. Be swift, young king, plot your escape. Send your letters, gain your allies, be forced to perform your part. Destroy the kingdom, imprison the captain, oracle, and mage. Be broken and rise from your own ashes. Save your kingdom, kill your puppeteers. Surrender with haste, transcribe all you've done, and at last, young king, die in peace. Another fact about me is that I really, 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 really like outer space.
Hey, let's go.
Let's go. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I will fall asleep listening to those really, really long, 30-minute long documentaries that tell you about how black holes will swallow the universe one day.
Yes.
And it makes me very, very happy. So this next poem it might be a little bit heretical, but I've always kind of said to myself that when I die and hopefully get into heaven, the first thing I'm going to ask God is if I can explore the universe and figure out all the answers that I still have 80 billion questions for. So this is called The Cosmonaut. I am the cosmonaut, the woman who, after her death, boldly approached God and asked if she could explore the stars. There were too many questions unanswered, too many sights unseen, and I was obsessed, swallowed, devoured whole by a desire just to see how far the universe would go. I waited eons for answers, but when it finally came, I heard the words, ad astra. I spent my thousands of lifetimes... I can't read that, hold on. This is my handwriting, by the way. I can't read it. I spent my thousands of lifetimes learning what makes the cosmos tick. I soared through the black and blue, careening faster than light, zigzagging from galaxy to galaxy. I cupped the stars in my hands, admiring them like fresh fruit, and I bit into the hearts of stars like they were the cores of an apple, just so I could know their taste. I watched their births and their deaths, their explosions burning white and deadly, but beautiful. I danced between binary stars, sipped the plasma from quasars, and swam through nebulae and painted new shapes in their reaching finger-like clouds. I have divin deep, is divin a word? I have dove deep into the kings of the universe, gaping voids, grand enough to swallow our solar system tenfold, and I plunged straight to its core, plucked the singularity from time and space, and I twirled it through my fingers like a Spanish coin. I learned the stars and voids by their true names, the names only their creator knew, and I befriended those creatures, weaving their own path through the universe, searching for other traces of life out there. I am the cosmonaut, the one who given permission to learn who was given permission to learn the answers, the true answers, to all things known and to all those things that we will never know. Thank you. Whoever did that one clap, thanks.
You're welcome. I got you.
All right, hold on. I'm trying to find my next poem. All right, so the next fact about me is that I have insomnia. Most of the times I'll go to bed at 9, and I won't be in bed, I won't actually fall asleep till about 11 or midnight. It's a struggle. But this poem I'm going to read, it's very angsty just because I was really grumpy that I couldn't get to sleep one night. So I wrote it on my phone and then wrote it in my diary the next morning. This is called 3:37 a.m. It's getting harder to sleep. I've been awake for hours and can only stare at the ceiling, thinking of nothing and praying that nothing comes along to disrupt this miserable quiet I'm laying in. There's a comfort in being sad, but I can't tell if it's sadness or medication or ghosts that pay homage to my sins that keep me awake. Do I care? No. Should I? I'm too tired to bother. It'll be dawn soon. I'll see if I'm able to care then. That was that one. All right, hold on. I'm trying to find my next poem. Give me 1 second. All right, another fact about me is I'm deeply nostalgic. The next 2 poems are going to show that. But I'm deeply nostalgic for a really crappy trailer that I grew up in that was in the middle of a bean field in southern Illinois. And there were these massive trees around our trailer, and a lot of the trees were overgrown with weeds, but there was one part of our backyard that was probably just about 50 square feet of honeysuckle. So this is my poem called Honeysuckle. When I was a girl, I used to walk around my house, barefoot and carefree on the clay. In thick brambles and vines, honeysuckle claimed the borders its home. I used to trace their pearl-white petals with intrigue, rub their oils into my fingertips, drink their nectar until I was sick. Their sweet smell shines in the roots of my soul, the taste a key to unlock memories of a time more youthful, more sweet. I would go back and play those memories if I could, but why return to the wood? Why seek out the pearl-white petals or drink their honeyed nectar when I find these memories again in you? That was that poem. That wasn't about someone, by the way. That last line, there's no one there. All right. Yeah. And so my last poem is probably my favorite poem I've ever written, and it's about my favorite drink. All my friends know what's coming. This is called peach soda. There was a janky little store in a crummy little town in a drab little chunk of blissfully boring southern Illinois, and it sold the best sodas. In the darkest corner of the Gray Lake Grocery glowed a navy chamber paned with glass that bore the name RC Cola. And within it stored rows of off-brand beauties, columns of neon cans storing neon drinks that tasted like you drank neon signs, garnished with the filaments of neon lights, bathing their drinks in their light. And there, I found the best soda I can remember. It was a peachy soda in a peachy can with sprawling green letters that gave me its name, Knee-High. The soda bubbled and fizzed louder and louder than any of the plain Jane Bland can flat after one sip drafts that my mother kept inside her fridge. No, this was a magical potion, crafted by the Most High wizards, imbuing the bubbles with the power of stars and with the taste of the liquid drops of sunset. It had the power of nectar, the transcendental high of the gods, and it had the power to store memories. Each sip was ingrained with a dream, some whisper of years ago, of sitting on a couch with a lousy dog curled in my lap, a war movie on the TV. Or in the back seat of a bus, drinking 12 cans by myself and almost vomiting. Or sitting at the edge of a driveway, waiting for the stars to meet me, and the sun to sink far down behind fields of wheat and black shadows of summer trees. A clear glass of peach soda, lifted to the sky for the colors to bleed together. The sun and nectar the same rosy hue, the flitting bubbles dancing about like flickerings of stars, waiting to burn through the atmosphere. I could raise it high, high enough for it to be blessed by the light of heaven, and it would always and forever glow like a sunset in Illinois. And forever and always will I desire the sunset in the Midwest. And when I should find myself longing, I will find a clear glass of nectar, and I will drink. Thanks.
Friends, family, and my enemies, thank you for sharing with me the Geneva reading series, Pirates. Now it's time for you to go. So go write something, read something, take care of one another, and join us next time for the Geneva reading series reunion. Good night.